So what is chaotic? Chaotic, it's got nothing to do with chaos theory, although it does talk about chaos. Chaotic is really the idea that a social group of people, any group of person, and in fact even an individual, can be in four different states. You can be in the state of chaos, which I'll draw as a cloud. You can be in a state of order, which we could draw as a water drop. We could be in a state of control, and we could be in a state of kamos, which we could draw as an explosion. And kamos in Finnish refers to the northern winter, but it actually comes from Greek, which means negative chaos. And a group can be anywhere on that gradient, and in fact it's always fluctuating between the two sides. And if you go too far one side, the group either way will destroy. So for example, if you go towards kamos, then you're going to get an explosion. And if you go too far towards control, you're actually going to get an implosion of the group. So you don't want that, of course, so you need to find a way of keeping the balance in the middle, and there's two parts that you can balance. One is quite originally called the order control path, and the other one is called the chaos and order path, which is called also the chaotic path, or the chaotic balance, some call it. And so they have different results. If you're wanting to get creative outcomes, think of brainstorming, creativity. You're going to use a balance of chaos and order. It can be also for problem solving, creative problem solving, fresh thinking. So most of the time in business, what we're looking for, particularly in creative agencies, is a balance of chaos and order. On the other hand, in some cases, you're definitely going to need order control. That's when you need predictable outcomes. So predictable outcomes is going to be, for example, heart surgery. You don't want to have too much creativity or experimentation in heart surgery. You want to be absolutely sure it works out. Think air traffic control, transport lines, and so on. And in fact, in most businesses, there's always going to be a path of order control around the budget controlling, for instance. But most of our work needs to balance chaos and order, which is what we're going to focus on here. So if anybody has worked with creatives, they'll know that actually chaos is necessary to get good ideas. The problem is not the chaos and creativity. The problem is how to bring in the order. Order is usually, think of it as the project manager looking at time and budget. And there's often a conflict and even a tension between these two. So what has been found, without going too deep into the theory, is really just that if you take the idea of process and content, which is often actually confused by people. If we think of the iceberg metaphor, where content is the top of the iceberg and process is the bottom of the iceberg. Content is really what you work on. So it could be in a meeting, the to-do list. It could be the ideas that came out of the meeting. Process is how we went through that. How did we do it? Did we have a dialogue? In what order, in what time did we do it, in what form of interaction? Most of the time, the process today is actually more chaotic than the content. If you think of a meeting agenda today, usually it's a content agenda. So the order today is mostly in the content. So for example, a list of questions and topics to go through is content. But if you want to actually have process in an agenda, for instance, you would be looking at time, beginning, end time, and also what are the activities that you're going to do to get the content you want. So for example, are you going to do a check-in? Are you going to do a brainstorm? Are you going to have a dialogue? Is it a presentation? And so on and so on. And those are process points. So now you see the difference between content and process. The important thing here is that what's been found by a number of people doing social experiments and social research, and in particular, the first to coin the idea of chaotic is somebody called D. Hock, who's the founder of the Visa, and he did a lot of work on the idea of balancing chaos and order. But so did also Owen Harrison, which is somebody you might want to look up. Because he wrote a book called Open Space Technology, which talks about how to design systems that keep a balance between chaos and order. Now, how do you do that? Essentially, it boils down to putting as much order in the process In other words, locking down the process with order, so that you can get chaos in the content. That's basically the hack, if you like, to do it. And that means that the degree to which you're locking down order in the process is the degree to which you can afford to have chaos in the content. And that's a terrifying prospect for many people, because they don't want too much chaos in the content. But the more you put order in the process, the more positive chaos you can get in the content. So an example of that would be, well, you can put order in the time. So you can have a start and end time to, for example, a meeting, which is often not given. Often we book a calendar slot with only a beginning time and a very vague end time. The other thing you can do is you can clarify the rules and the roles. So if we look at roles first, what we tend to look at is roles in terms of process roles. Think of a process role as the role you have to help the process go forwards. It's also called ego roles. We have a whole set of cards that we created to help people understand the difference between process roles and content roles. Content role might just be your expertise. For instance, if you're a coder, your role is a content role. If you're a designer, it's a content role. A process role is, are you the boss? Are you the lead? Are you the supervisor? Those are process roles. And what we found is that it's very helpful to actually agree and explicit what are the actual process roles. The two roles that are absolutely essential to make the chaotic balance is the host role and the harvester role. We'll be doing some more on those later, but if we put it really shortly, a host is basically the one holding time and space, holding the process together, making sure that things happen in the right order and that we actually get things on time. The harvester is the one who's trying to make sure that the content is generated and is shared to everybody who needs to have it. And usually it works best to have a host and harvester as two different people, which we call the hosting team. So the hosting team, think of it as pilot or co-pilot, and you really need that hosting team to keep process order as well as a time. And then, of course, you need rules. Rules are often implicit. People don't really talk about them because it's not much fun. But actually, rules are very, very important. And one of the rules, for instance, is the rule of respect. There's some implicit rules in companies like Futurize where people all agree to be respectful and kind, but actually in practice, sometimes those things break down because the rules in a particular meeting are not clarified. An example of that might be Brainstorm Rules. Some of you have even tried those out, but brainstorms are known to need rules. For instance, one conversation at a time, go for quantity, no quality, and so on, no judgment. Those are rules, but you also could do with rules in any other process than a brainstorm, for instance, a check-in. So rules, roles, and time, looking after time, are three very important aspects of making sure the process is in order. And that includes small processes. Like in many organizations, the process is okay in the big picture. Like you might sell lean service creation as a bigger process, but the process of day-to-day operation might be more chaotic. So chaotic balance is when you balance chaos and order, and you do so by making sure that the process is in order to allow the chaos, the creativity and the good ideas to come out from the content of those conversations.